What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. It's Luffy directly back with another Minecraft video this month. First Sunday every month you'll get a Minecraft video, and this month we're tackling a question that was asked by my son. Dad, can you travel 1,000,000 blocks in Minecraft hardcore in 100 days? Now this piqued my interest. Mathematically speaking, is it plausible to travel 1,000,000 blocks in 100 days? Not even hardcore, just 100 days. So I got to thinking, is it possible? And we're going to answer that question today. Now, there's a couple different angles we're going to cover today. Phase one, we're going to try just doing hardcore. We're going to see what the average is. We're going to see what the numbers say. But to just take straight off and run, well, can't do that. So day one, we're going to spend all day. This is the settings I set. Day one, take time collecting your materials. Get ready for the run. Now you can't be fully prepared. Not from scratch. But what you can do, and what I did, is I took day one as the opportunity to get everything that I could get within that day. And then take off. Because you're going to have to stop and get wood. You need stone tools at least. You got to be able to collect food and kill animals, or you're going to waste time punching everything. Made a bed, made furnaces, got my crafting table, got my stone tools, got a piece of chicken, a couple pieces of beef, and then it's time to head out. Now I'm going to pick one direction. But first, I want to find 0, 0. To make this challenge absolutely accurate, not Y0. We're not going to be traveling underground, but X and Z, we need to find 0, 0 first. We need to find 0.0 origin, which I think is going to end up being in this water. Yeah, okay. So we're just going to start in the water then. Start in the water, and let's see. I think we're going to do... We're going to do the x-axis. Now, I spent a couple days. I spent day one raiding some villages. Day two, we came across an ice biome. Got some loot out of some shipwrecks. And honest to God, doing this challenge, this is the best way to get stuff. Shipwrecks. Now, I try not to deter too much from the x-axis. Want to try to be 1,000,000 blocks, roughly 0. So I check my coordinates every so often. It's no big deal. But loot is positively, already got my first diamond. I've made a couple sacks from cows and spider webs to be able to hold everything. And I just constantly take, and as I find stuff in shipwrecks and other materials that I need, and I compress, like all the ores I compress into blocks. 9 iron make 1 iron block, and the sacks are based off stacks of 64. So like if you have 4 or 5 stacks of iron and you turn it into like 20 some blocks of iron, I don't even know the math. You can put those 20 blocks in a sack and it take up less space. Whereas if you put a stack of 64 iron, it just fills up the whole bag. But right here's a prime example of how I did it. And then the ores that weren't able to be turned, I just put back in. But looting your villages, your shipwrecks, and your nether portals are a really good source of food, as well as ores, which I eventually ended up using later on in this challenge. Now, this particular phase one portion of the challenge, I didn't go. See, we're already sitting at almost negative 30,000 on day 10, which means I'm averaging roughly 3,000 blocks per day. Now, I'm not running night and day, so there is the potential, if you only ran during the day, to score roughly 300,000, give or take stopping and whatever else you had to do. I'd say somewhere between 250 and 400,000 at most, 250 being the least. You should easily be able to conquer 250,000 blocks in 100 days, sleeping at night. Now, based off that math, nighttime is a little bit more hectic. It's not as much of a straight shot. You have enemies Therefore, I don't know that would absolutely double it, but for the sake of the hypothesis, let's just double the 3,000 intake. Let's say you can crush 6,000, maybe even 7,500 based off the time. Because, you know, when the sun starts to set, sometimes you have to just kind of sit and wait a couple seconds or a minute before you can actually sleep, which is blocks spent running. So, with that being said, we can easily double it. We can say I'd feel comfortable with the math saying 500,000 to 750,000 at most. Mathematically, it is not possible to run without stopping nonstop for 4 million blocks for 100 days. I lost my train of thought there. I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick. Let's see. 1 million blocks, right? So how many per day would you have to travel? Well, statistically speaking, you would have to travel roughly, is it 10,000? Add the zeros, 100, add the zero. Yeah, so 10,000 blocks a day is what you'd have to travel every day, which there's 20 minutes in a Minecraft day, right? So if we take that logic of 10,000 and we divide it by 20, you take your zeros away, which makes it 1,000. You divide that by 2. So 500 blocks. 500 blocks a day. Now, I stopped in this village 500 blocks a minute. But I stopped in this village here and traded all the materials I had collected and worked on getting the villagers up and ended up getting full diamond armor. I was completely decked out with diamond tools except a pickaxe and a shovel on day 24. But I had to spend 3 days in this village to get it done. So, you know, with that being said, it's plausible. But 500 a minute, that's roughly 75 a second. Not plausible. But phase 2. So I think in Minecraft Hardcore you could travel it non-stop with terrain. Do not. Not in 100 days. I think you can get close. I think you may even be able to pull it off in 120 days. But phase 2. Now that was just staying strictly in the overworld. Now, phase 2 is going to take place in the Nether. Now here's the logic. The Nether is a 1:8 block ratio. So by that logic, it is very plausible to do this. But the terrain in the Nether is so much worse, right? So if the terrain was normal, you didn't have to worry about all this. Starting from scratch, build a Nether portal, got in it, or even if you reach day 25, 1:8 block ratio. That means if you could just travel 3,000 blocks in a day here, because there's 20 minutes, and you don't have to worry about mobs coming out because they're all here, right? So let's just say because of the terrain and enemies, you can only travel half the distance you normally would. So if you could crush 3,000 days in 1 day, times that by 100, that would be 300,000. Times it by 8, because these are blocks in here, you would easily crush 1 million. Now, when I did this, I got a very bad spawn, which is typical in the Nether. Everything's bad in the Nether. And I managed with with netherite tools, I was able to crush about 1,000 blocks, which is 8,000 in the overworld, and that's with a bad spawn. And there's tricks of the trade, like if you came to the Nether prepared, like not just spawning in from scratch like the original challenge in phase 1. This is like being fully decked out. I want to travel 1 million blocks. I'm going to leave my base. Can I do it in 100 days? With the blocks, with all the stuff that you've collected, having absolutely decked out gear, I do think it's possible. Starting in the Nether from scratch and not having anything, or just having iron gear, I think it would be a lot more challenging. I don't think I'd have got 1,000 blocks. You would burn through so many tools. And you can't stack tools in leather sacks. They take up the whole sack. So with that being said, that's a little bit more of an issue. Is it plausible mathematically? Yes, if you can pull off the distance of the block. Absolutely. going through the Nether is definitely a viable option. So if you combine your overworld with Nether travel, I do think it's possible. Now, Minecraft Hardcore, you're going to run into some issues. But we traveled 1,000 blocks. We ended up at 7,000. Or right at 900 is when I died. So it is very plausible. Using the Nether mathematically 1-to-8 block ratio, if you could pull off roughly, really, let's see, 1,500, I think is pretty close to what you need to pull off a million blocks to a 1-to-8 ratio for 100 days, because that would give you 150,000. I guess that would be 1.2 million. I guess actually maybe 1,250 is what you would need. Yeah, 1,250 is what you would need, I think, because that would be 125,000 times 8 would be 800,000. And then a quarter would be, yeah, I think 1,250 blocks in the Nether. Phase 3, we're going to be going back to the Nether for this question, because there are ways to get on the roof. Now, the roof has no mobs, except for Endermen occasionally. The roof is flat, no terrain. All you would need is food. That's all you're going to need is food. So if you could run in the overworld until you got what you needed to be able to get onto the roof, and have the blocks to build an additional portal, you could easily spend 20 minutes, one day, getting onto the roof, and you would absolutely make up for it. Now, all this is sped up for obvious reasons. There's no one wants to watch me run on the roof for 20 minutes. I did this for science. I put in the effort to answer the question my son asked. When I started this channel back up, I put down a couple different ideas that I wanted to try to do, and I asked my kids. Kids have interesting insight, and my son's like, I got a question, Dad, about hardcore Minecraft 100 days. I said, what you got, bud? He said, can you travel 1 million blocks in 100 days? I said, I don't know. I said, that's a really good question. And so I've set out to answer that, and that's what we're doing today. I took the time to test out a couple different theories and try to get the best case scenario, and then I'm going to attempt to do it using everything I've learned in these test process or hypotheses. Of course, my little girl didn't have any ideas, and she's like, what's single biome? I was like, that's where you pick a biome and you try to live 100 days just in that biome. You can do it on Java. She's like, whenever you're ready to do that, I'll pick your biome. I was like, I don't know how much I trust that, but okay. So yeah, you will eventually see which biome my little girl picked. And let's just say it's going to be interesting. But we're already pushing 7,000. Now, this is just running straight for 20 minutes. Nothing else. Getting on top of the roof and running for 20 minutes. And just based off that logic, we needed to run 10,000 in the overworld per day. 10,000 in the overworld. We just ran in one day 66,000 blocks. That's one day. One day. So even in the phase 1 where I was sitting at roughly this blockage, I think I was in negative 70,000, you could easily do what I did for the first 25 days. Get all the stuff that you need from temples, TNT, find a swamp with some slimes. Even if you only got to 70,000 by day 50, doing this right here, let's just say 65,000 a day. 65,000 a day. That's roughly 10 days is 660,000. 15 days, you're looking probably somewhere around 900,000 or close to 1 million. So easily. I think you could do this easily in probably 18 days from the roof. Now, phase 4. Phase 4 is a little bit more simplistic. Say, phase 4, we're going to be using the elytra. Now, my curiosity rose here, the elytra. Can the elytra I think with the elytra in the overworld, not on top. I mean, because if you had the elytra and went and did it on the Nether roof, I mean, you would just absolutely crush it. I mean, the Nether roof is, without a shadow of a doubt, makes anything possible for traveling blockwise. Now, the question does rise to the equation. If you travel 66,000, 100 days would be 6.6 million, right? So then the question begins to beckon, could you possibly pull off 7 million on the roof in the Nether? There's so many options. Another question I had about the elytra, with no enchantments, how long would it last? How many rockets would it take per day to travel how far? How far could I get? Now, 10,000 is what we need to crush per day to reach 1,000,000 blocks. Now, as you can see, within minutes, I've already crushed 10,000. Not a problem. And I went through one stack of rockets. Question is, will the elytra hold up for the full 1,000,000? Because we're burning quickly. And then if we add enchantments, how many elytras would it take to travel 1,000,000 days? These are questions because, I mean, you could always, bring shulker boxes full of rockets and experience bottles. And you could land once every other day and, top off your experience if it's got mending on it and unbreaking. So there's ways around just having one elytra. You just have the right enchantments. You got to have the right stuff with it. I think you can get experience bottles from the potion guy. So if you got like a trading hall or villager camp or, whatever you do with your villagers, I don't want to know. Just putting it out there. Whatever you decide to do, you could easily prep for the elytra. And just based off the numbers on the screen, this is one day. You're easily going to break roughly 30 to 35,000. And I've only burnt roughly, and I'm just burning through them. It's not just because it's sped up. I'm burning through them as well. And I was still in creative mode when I attempted this. So it takes about a half a stack to recharge an elytra. That's used for a day and about 4 stacks of rockets, but we got to about 30,000, 33,000. So based off that, 10 days is 300,000, 20 days is 600,000, 30 days is 900,000 with the 3. So in about 30 days, give or take, how long it takes you to rejuvenate is really the age-old question. So I'd say about 30 to 35 days with the elytra. You can pull it off with one, but in the testing I did, one without any enchants broke almost by the end of day 1 when the sun was going down, not even flying through the night. So to pull that off at about 15,000, you would need roughly 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. You need like 60 elytras, and they're not stackable. You're not going to have the inventory for it. I mean, you could do it with shulker boxes, I guess, with 3 of them. But you could just enchant it and maybe have 2 or 3 just in case you don't get down on one of them. But Totem of Dying would really help too if you're not paying attention. But there is one more phase, and I know I wasn't going to do it. But deep down, I knew you want to know. I just knew you would want to know. I mean, I want to know. So I think it's a good idea that we test the elytra, which is broken, and the roof. Now, by this logic, we reached 33,000 in 20 minutes. Now, we don't have a sun. I've set a timer. So just mathematically speaking, without even showing it, 33,000 times, times 8. Let's see here. 33,000 times 8 equals 264. So with your elytra, with some enchantment bottles and some rockets, you could easily probably achieve 1,000,000 blocks in 4 days. 4 days. So let's go back over to math. Phase 1. Straight up just minecart. Starting off in a new hardcore world is not plausible. I would love to see who could get the furthest starting from scratch, taking day 1 to prep. but I still think the math is standard. Even if you risk it and run all through the night, you're just going to potentially reach somewhere between 5 and 750,000. I think it's potentially, regardless, if you start from scratch into neither, I don't think you'll survive. You may be able to. That would be interesting as well. But I think you could reach close to 900,000, maybe a million. The roof is clearly plausible. The question is how many days. The elytra is plausible. I think you could actually reach a million blocks quicker running on the roof than you could flying in the overworld. But with the elytra on top of the roof, that is your best bet. But I will be putting all this to the test in upcoming videos. So yes, it is doable. At least in my opinion.